technologies in the developing world. Okay, so some background on this topic. So about 1.1 billion people in the world live without access to electricity, and 25% of these 1.1 billion people are from India. And another issue with this is that there's not a lot of reliability with this electricity. So about 2/3 of people in Africa do not have access to reliable power. And reliability poses an issue because there's not a lot of time for lights to be on within homes or communities, so people don't will only get access to electricity for 2 to 3 hours of the day. And another problem is that when there are governmental blackouts, there's really no way to communicate with the community or homes to that an outage is occurring. So those are some problems, but an even bigger problem is that a lot of the energy in these developing countries is still produced with coal and oil. And only a fraction of the energy produced is actually, the electricity produced with energy coming from renewable power, such as hydropower or other non-hydro renewables. So other problems that people are facing are that many people do not have access to the electricity grid or aren't even really on this grid at all. So, and it's not a reliable grid, as I mentioned before. And the second problem is that there are many remote charging stations, so people often have to walk miles and miles just to charge their cell phone or charge a lamp for their community. And so many people just opt out of even going to these charging stations. Many groups in developed nations are working in a variety of different places, but the problem about this is that there are a lot of small-scale projects, and they aren't really capitalizing on all of the energy that is going into all of these projects. And since a lot of these projects around the world are very similar, groups like nonprofits working on these issues could really come together and form coalitions to face developing renewable technologies. Another problem with the effect that developed nations have on developing nations is that a lot of the ideas are applied to villages that may not always fall under what the Western world may look like. And so these groups really aren't making it special or individual for these villages in their approaches when they want to put renewable energy into the community. And finally, I have a friend who actually was in Peru recently on a medical volunteer trip, and she had told me about how many people in the cities of Peru, more urbanized areas, will actually sell energy credits to people in these rural communities at much more expensive prices. So people in these rural communities are really just not being helped with these illegal transactions. So one specific problem is that many of these homes have kerosene lamps. And these kerosene lamps, they're subsidized by the government because they run on oil. And they emit 90 million tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere per year. So that's one of the environmental impacts. But one social impact is that 1.6 million deaths annually throughout the world occur. And primarily these deaths are of women and young children, because most of the time women and young children remain in the home and are subjected to these fumes of these lamps. They also pose a lot of local environmental degradation, since many people are going out into the community and chopping down trees to fuel these similar lamps to these as well, ones that don't run on oil. And a lot of time is actually lost in collecting these materials. So that time could be used for education or for other activities that would benefit the social dimension of just living, I guess. But so yeah, loss of time is a big issue with this. So one solution could be to have electric stoves powered by renewable energy, and this really just goes along with this whole presentation of having renewable technologies within developing nations. So focusing more on the social issues related to the renewable technology. So the social issues that are alleviated are that healthcare actually becomes less dangerous. More people, many people require medical attention during the night, and with access to medical care during the evenings, it can become tricky if you don't have any light or any place to go to get that care. Education levels rise with increased studying time, so more people are allowed to read their books and open their notes during the nighttime and pursue education. Businesses stay open later, so more people are benefiting from increased flows of money into their businesses, and the community is supported by this. Indoor air pollution is addressed, and so as I mentioned, those kerosene lamps, less and less of those are being used, and so indoor air pollution is able to be cleaner in these homes. And then finally, the quality of leisure activities like cooking and socializing rises, so people are having a better quality of life when it comes to these processes. And this all leads to decreasing poverty and increasing gender equality in the developing world. So one example are solar lanterns in India. And these lanterns have 2 LED lights within them that are energized by a 40-watt solar panel within the community. So the solar panel is located in a central zone of the community, and people can charge these lanterns at one central place and use them in their homes and around the community. And the organization that made these solar lanterns is called CEVE Networks, and what they proposed as their business plan was something very similar to a cell phone plan. So they promote subscription plans to these customers and have rates at about 35 cents a day to use these lanterns in the community. And like I said before, a lot of the issues faced by communities are different worldwide. So in this particular community in India, they use the lanterns for when they're logging timber and with elephants. They use them when they have religious ceremonies in the area, and also with fish farming. The second example that I will be talking about is called AWOW, and they are a nonprofit that serves Costa Rica, Ghana, Liberia, and Nigeria, and they promote the use of renewables within these countries through empowering individuals. So I was able to actually speak with Anafo Peter a couple of days ago, and he told me about his community that benefited from the use of technology from AWOW. So his village, as just some background, does not have any electricity, and they have solar panels around the vicinity of his community. So electricity is generated around the community, and the community members use that to power their homes. So AWOW actually donated these solar panels. They also donated laptops and Wi-Fi. And Anafo mentioned to me that these laptops and Wi-Fi are not only used for students' education, but they're also promoting business within the area. The third example that I will be talking about is President Obama's Electrify Africa Act of 2015. And the goal for this act was to provide electricity to 50 million people in sub-Saharan Africa by 2020. So all of this energy is going to come from cleaner and renewable sources instead of the non-renewable sources like oil and coal. And the US government is actually committing $7 billion in support of this initiative. And other stakeholders are also involved who have also contributed money, and that number is about like $43 billion. And these stakeholders include African governments, the developmental partners, and also the private sector. So the Electrify Africa Act is actually underneath a larger plan called the Power Africa Initiative. And they have outlined a few social goals for what every project needs to access and complete to be sustainable. So one of those goals is to have an African-led reform. So their mission is not about just kind of giving the technology that the Power Africa Initiative comes up with, but it's really about working with community members so that the community can benefit and people can learn how to not only create these technologies in the future, they work to fill the skills gaps, but also just promote these technologies. And then a second social goal is empowering women. And through these projects, programs, and policies, the Power Africa Initiative just wants to reduce gender inequalities and promote effective engagement with women within the community. So this kind of begs the question, should more precedents be set by the developed world when it comes to renewable technologies in developing nations? I've mentioned that there are issues that arise with this, so ones where these groups really don't know what the real problem is of the community, but I've also mentioned some benefits that they can have, like the Power Africa Initiative. But that's just a question that I wanted to pose to the audience and kind of for you guys to keep that in mind, and we'll come back to that at the end. So another main point that the developed world serves in a positive light is, or what they can do to have a positive impact, is really promote technology within the developing nations. So there's an urgent need for developed countries to produce, market, install, operate, and maintain sustainable energy technologies in developing countries. And as I mentioned before, about really making it sustainable to that particular community, these technologies need to be robust and effective and also well adapted to the specific community. So a relationship that needs to be fostered needs to definitely be a strong one. Technology also needs to transfer from the developed nations to the developing world, and this builds capacity in the local communities. And one way to build up capacity is to promote regional institutes for research and really develop skills within the local communities to impact the future of renewable technologies. And this also promotes job growth in the process. So this table is showing the price of current energy costs of renewable energy sources, and it also outlines the potential future energy costs of these technologies, and they also provide a low and a high cost. And to give some background to this, the typical costs in developed countries is about 2 to 4 cents per kilowatt hour, and when they have peak power prices, it's about 15 to 25 cents per kilowatt hour. So as you can see, a lot of these actually fall within that range, so it's not out of reach in particular communities. And this is just highlighting that this is affordable and it can be effective if we have the right policies towards it, because also in the future it's kind of remaining at the same levels that it is now, and it's in competition with many of the energy technologies that are used in developed countries. So, a professor at Stanford University, Mark Jacobson, said that the main barriers to getting to 100% clean energy are social and political and not technical or economic. So he and his colleagues researched how they could develop a plan for not only America but also the world, and they called it like a blueprint map of the world to develop, to see what countries need, specifically on a country-by-country basis, to have 100% renewable technology by the year 2050. So there are actually really great blueprints online that I was hoping we could access from people who have computers and maybe can share. Otherwise, I could pull it up on the screen. But basically, it shows a country, yeah, actually, if you want to press the first one. Or the one on the left. Or this one's fine, actually. Okay, so this one is actually for America. So it outlines what each state needs to do and what is specific to each state, and what kind of energy that they can access. So if we select Texas, can you do it in the drop-down menu? Or scroll down maybe a little bit more. Yeah. I think you can click on the map too if it's easier. Yeah. Okay, so first of all, it outlines all of the renewable technologies at the top. And so Texas would, if you go to a solar plant, so Texas could produce 15% of its energy by 2050 by using solar plants in the area. Most of the renewable technology that Texas could have is actually onshore wind, and Texas actually already does a really good job with wind energy. They have the largest wind farm in the United States. So this is also showing that solar energy could also be capitalized on. And if you press the top little bar on the solar plant, right on this bar, and it also shows what states could benefit the most from certain technologies. So Kentucky can actually have 80% of its renewable technology devoted to solar power. And then if you scroll down more, more down. Sorry, I wasn't there. It also shows the power reduction of demand, the money that can be saved per person, and then the area of land needed for this venture into renewables. And this actually includes all of the renewables, so it's not just showing solar energy right now. So a 40% reduction of demand could be reached if Texas was run on 100% renewables as compared to what it has right now. So this one was showing the US, and then the other link actually, which if you, I don't know if it will work.
I think you'll have to highlight, copy and paste.
So for instance, if we choose India, show, and if you click on India. So this one also does the same thing. It's written by the same researcher. And So India could actually receive the majority of the renewable energy from solar plants. So that's in contrast with Texas. Texas is wind energy. India can get most of their renewable energy from solar plants. And if you scroll down more, it also shows how many jobs will be created, and also the reduction of energy, which would be 43%. And it also shows the avoided mortality and illness costs. So this relates to the social dimensions of renewable technology in the developing world. And it gives some other metrics and data. But it's just a really helpful tool to learn about the communities all around the world and also in the USA. So, and hopefully it will be a good tool to use in the future as well as we explore renewable technology in all parts of the world. Thank you. Yeah, and I just wanted to leave you again with this question of if we should set precedents and in the developed world.
So like a couple questions from students.
Sure. First off, thanks for the presentation. It was a topic that I haven't really been educated that much about. Can you go back to the slide, like slide 3 or 4 on coal and its predicted use in the future? Yeah. So are you saying that is this basically predicting that in the future that the majority of energy in developing countries will come from coal? And is there something that can be done about that?
Yes, this graph was showing that, and when I was presenting, I guess I was trying to highlight this number right here, so that right now in 2016, they're still relying on coal and oil for their electricity production, and but yes, this graph actually does show that in 2030, the developing nations could still be relying on it, but most of the things that are mentioned in this presentation, I think, could be utilized to decrease this. And there's also a researcher that does work on wedges and taking out the carbon footprint with wedges and what can be developed. And so I think that maybe if some of these wedges were employed, coal and oil could definitely be decreased and the renewables could kind of take over this.
Do you know when and who made this plot? I don't see the citation for
Oh,
it.
yes.
And what do you think is achieved based on the research that you've done? How much better than this could we do? This is one possible future, but of course we're not in 2030 yet, so how much better do you think we could do?
So this graph actually, it's in my references, but it came from a group that was actually a global group, so a group that had researchers from all over the world. And I think that in terms of electricity generation, especially since more solar-powered electricity stations are being employed in developing nations, so it's not always about getting power lines out to everyone, but sometimes it's just knowing where to put a design in the area. I think that maybe we could cut it in half, hopefully, or at least sustain the levels of I think that I don't really know. I'm kind of unsure, but I would hope that we could switch over to a more renewable society.
On your solar lanterns in India, the subscription model, do you have any sense for whether that rate, their 30 whatever cents per day, is that comparable to what they pay for other things, or is it high? Is it low? Do you know?
Yeah, it's actually a high number. I forget the percentage. I think it was about 20 to 40% of most people in the community's income. So it was actually a really high level, and that's another problem kind of posed by these companies and people who seek to put energy in developing nations.
one of which was the teen pregnancy. I was wondering how renewable energy affects teen pregnancy.
So that kind of goes back to the women within the home and having to breathe in kerosene emissions and all of this. So again, if there was more access to electricity and more light was provided within the home, there could be more time not only devoted to gathering materials for these lamps or doing things that relate to that, but that time could be devoted to education and studying time and so that's basically what it was. And that correlates with the decrease in pregnancies within teens.
We need to end it there. Thank you for your presentation.